All right, we are here on the live stream on Twitch to do Armchair GM of Evil Geniuses, and that's who the chat voted for. So if you wished that I would cover a different team, I'm going to be doing other teams today and separate coverage for each of them. But join the stream live and you can vote on which teams I should cover. So Evil Geniuses was the vote. So right now we're putting together to start. I've got a bit of a framework for how I like to approach this. And so I'm putting together kind of the outline of what's available and what is here. So, e.g., these are all the players from LCS and Academy that they have under contract, and there's a good point that they do have players that are contracted with them for amateur, for e.g. Prodigies. So I'm going to make a note here, because these are players that are currently in a relationship with the org, but all of the amateur contracts are fixed to a single year, so they'll expire at the end of this, like when free agency opens this year. Like if we scroll down to e.g. Prodigies, they all expire November 6th, right? Which is around the time of Scouting Grounds. And so they can't be, approached without the permission of the Evil Geniuses org. Without, it's poaching if you approach them while they're under contract. But they can't be contracted over a multiple year period. So amateur level players, this is why we saw, and I've talked about this before, this is why we saw Tomio get promoted up into Academy right before the roster lock for summer. That's why we saw 100 Thieves do it with Busio. It's been done in the past so that they could extend their contracts into multiple years. So if you then look up to Evil Geniuses with Tomio, he now has a contract to 2023, which he wouldn't have been able to do unless they brought him up to Academy. And same with 100 Thieves and Busio. So I'm going to make a note of those players that EG have a relationship with, but that doesn't mean, that these players are locked in and, they are technically going to be a free agent. So I'll just label these as pending free agents. So this is a lot, right? Compared to some teams, if we look at, Dig have several free agents opening up. CLG have most of their roster becoming free agents. Cloud9 always have their players locked down for as long as possible. But, compared to some teams, EG only have one actual contract expiring. Golden Guardians picked up the Cloud9 approach, have long contracts and everybody. So that means EG have a lot of flexibility and control in that sense. If they don't want to keep working with a player, they can either try to sell them or just release them from their contract, right? If they find there's no market to sell them. And so that's one of the things that is hard to predict. And probably what I want to start by doing here is labeling, do I think EG see this as a long-term piece? Or do I think it's one that they'd be willing to say, we're going to try something else here? So Impact, this is a lock. We'll call it a building block even. Impact is a definite building block. He was, I believe I voted him first team All-Pro, maybe second for Summer Split. He's still very good. He's got elements of his play that aren't as strong as others. He's not as mechanically good as Alfari, things like that, and so on. But he is such a good veteran presence. He's still very good competitively, and especially with a team that I expect to continue to go young, or at least start to go young with the talent that's been coming up. Danny is the first sign of that. Having someone like Impact in there, huge. And I guess before I go too much through this, I should be laying out those goals, but. So, goals for 2022, EG want to win LCS and go to Worlds. That's the level they're aspiring to. So you can say, I think both of those are the same. Sub-goal will in LCS, sub-goal, basically continue to restock their talent pipeline. So keep the talent pipeline flowing. And I think it's both of those, right? Like the absolute highest expectations. I mean, MSI is a bonus along the way. There are some comments in the chat about Impact potentially having to go to military service after 1 more year. And I'm not sure if that's the case. If it is, then you're going to get 1 year out of him, and then he's going to move on. But I think that's also fine because we're looking at next year. EG are not looking like they're always working towards a 2 or 3 year plan when you look at what they do in their talent pipelines. But right now, their focus is we fell short this year. We didn't go to Worlds. And if you came into 2021 and looked at the expectations for the year, I think this would not be a disappointing year from those expectations going back to like December or January. I think I power ranked them 5th, like back in December. And, I would have I think I had them 5th going into summer as well after seeing how spring went. And then they built up these expectations over the course of the regular season, and I thought they were going to win the whole thing, which I was obviously incorrect about. But, from the stepping even further back, going out 5th overall is, okay, well, that's kind of what we thought we might do this year. And along the way, we brought up Danny. Along the way, we learned more things about other players. We stocked up, in players developing an academy, all of that. So this is, I think, a pretty successful year for EG. So yeah. Anyways, the goals and sub-goals here are not super clear, or like clear separation, because this is different. Like if you remember what I did for CLG, I said their goals were start building a long-term foundation. And so the sub-goal was youth movement, also mentorship for the youth movement, and having a reasonably successful competitive environment. And this is different. The goal for EG is just we're going to win. But in the meantime, we also want to keep the talent pipeline flowing, right? So it's a little different from the CLG thing, and this whole goals, sub-goals thing maybe doesn't apply quite as well. Kelsey, I will tell you exactly what to do. Teach Surdy Delane on Gangplank. How's that? I don't know. He's probably good at it. He's probably good. Yeah. I'm not armchair player developmenting. Suddenly a bunch of EG internal dynamics playing out in the Twitch chat. Okay, so anyways, back to this. Impact. Building block. We can put a note here that he might have to go to military in 2023, but I don't actually know. Kelsey says GP is one of Surdy's off-season goals. Well, there we go. Svenskeren. This is a piece that you try to sell for me. Danny is a building block. So impact is, here we can have the whole sub goal of no, we don't need this. We can just say impact is here to help us win LCS. Danny is a combination. He's good enough to win LCS right now, and he's also part of your long-term talent pipeline. Yeah, building the brand and so on is something that I don't really think I can cover that well in something like this. I'm just here for competitive stuff. I can mention it a little bit, especially if we talk about like FlakWest, for example. What do you do with Jose Dioto? This is part of your brand. You're trying to get the Spanish-speaking fan base and all of that. So you can talk about that as a factor, but it's not a primary thing that I'm going to worry about so much. Ignar. I'm trying to figure out a shorthand for this. So Ignar, basically my take is, if you can find an upgrade, you upgrade. But I don't feel a ton of pressure to upgrade. So more like upgrade if possible. But, we'll have to see what their take is on that. Because, you can go in and say, my ideal scenario is I'm going to sign Chovy, but then he's not available and you have to have all these alternatives, right? So, yeah, I think you can look at Ignar and say, maybe we're going to try to move on from him, but it's not like we feel we have to. I think Ignar is good enough. You can win LCS with him. Jizuke is a free agent at the end of this year, yeah. Tony Top, I think you could... you can continue developing him. This is part of the talent pipeline. Tomio as well. You can continue developing him. They only just promoted him at the end of this year. I think he's a longer term option for them. Jojo Pyun, part of their talent pipeline. This is probably the hardest piece to plan out for EG. So I'm gonna talk about him a little bit in a moment. Team Luke. It's a bit of a challenging one because I think he did pretty well as kind of like when they did their shuffle for summer. They brought Danny from EG Prodigies up into the starting lineup. They sent Shoryu from Academy into Amateur because of like he couldn't come locally or some things like that, and playing remotely was kind of a bit of a problem they wanted to solve. They brought Team Luke in, and I think as kind of a bot lane prospect, he's decent. He's one of a group of players who might be able to break through. But if you've already got Danny, like if kind of the somewhat unthinkable thing happened and a team came and offered really big money for Danny, and you're like, well, we can't turn that number down. You sold Danny on, then maybe you replace Danny and you get a different veteran bot laner, and then you keep Team Luke in Academy. Right, so I think you don't have to make a choice on him without seeing how the other dominoes fall. So, yeah. Mystiques, I think, I think he would not be, if you promoted Mystiques, he would not be better than Ignar. Based on what we saw this year. And I think it's time. You've got Skytech that I imagine they're going to want to develop him in Academy next year. That's my guess. I might be wrong on that. So I think you move on from Mystiques and say, this was kind of our relatively veteran piece in Academy. And we don't really have the need for that right now. That's my thought. So I think you move on from him. This music is Lulu and Shaco's Quirky Encounter. It's blocked on my Spotify. It's from the Riot Games Creator Safe playlist. Empire. I sold Danny to TSM. That's what happened. Jizuke's a free agent. For those who are late to this, he is not a current asset. Asset in this, I guess I should have explained, is a player who you kind of have control over, like who you have a contract with. Not control in the like Machiavellian sense, but Bluster, 15-year-old. I don't know. You try to keep him in EGP, convince him that this is the org he wants to be in. I think you've got Tomio, you've got Bluster. And there might be other things that they want to do in the jungle space. So they're going to have to make some choices. Which prospects are we working with here? I don't think you've got an LCS starter candidate. Obviously, Bluster won't even be allowed to play an LCS, so that's not something you're going to talk about. Tomio, I think, won't be ready for LCS by start of next year. I think you give him a full year in Academy to see. And yeah, so between them, I think obviously you only have a certain number of slots. So I think you do your best to convince Bluster, assuming that if they brought him in as a 15-year-old, and I think I saw enough from him so far, and we're going to see improving ground still. Based on that, unless something goes really wrong, you say, well, this is a guy who we're going to want to build out and see if we can get a long-term success with him. And if you've got Tomio and Bluster both trying to develop within your system, then you've got just higher chances of one of them working out to become an LCS piece. I'm probably not going to retain Shoryu. Aspect I'm a little less sure on. Would you select the question here is either you bring him up to Academy or you move on and try something else. I don't think there's a whole lot as much reason to keep him in EGP. But like this is where the amateur level, like I said, is so difficult. Cold-hearted to say move on. Yeah, it kind of is. This is where, again, a thing about armchair GMing compared to real GMing that is so different is that I'm working with names in a spreadsheet, and as a real GM, you're working with real people, and so it's easy for me to treat them as assets rather than people, which is not intended to be cold and cruel, but it is a business. So like Surdy and Aspect are both ones that like I'm not sure if I see LCS. Like, it's a little bit longer shot for them to become LCS level in the future. Skytech and Bluster, I think I see more potential for them to get there. So, yeah, I don't know. There's not a whole lot for me to say. I'm not really going to dig into those ones so much. Like, I think Surdy and Aspect are both good players. I don't know. I'm just trying to, like, make myself not feel bad about saying I don't think they're part of the long-term plans for EG. If I was EG, that is. Yeah, and I think like Surdy and Aspect, this is a good point, Tom Shu. Like Surdy and Aspect, if EG don't have a place for them, it's the best thing. Like if they say we're going to work with other prospects, there are other orgs that should definitely bring these guys in because they've got a higher chance of succeeding compared to some of the other players. Like, hey, CLG, you wanna work on your youth movement? Go talk to, assuming that EG don't re-sign them, talk to Surdy and Aspect. These are players that an org like CLG could start to build a bit of their youth movement with. Okay, back to some of the more difficult pieces to talk about. Kelsey says, I'm recommending CLG to sign Surdy and Aspect for LCS. Uh-huh. Definitely exactly what I said. Okay, contracts. I think we saw enough. I think it's unfortunate that he didn't play up to kind of the expectations I had of him in the playoffs, especially obviously in the losses. But I think he's still a pretty good player that you could continue to work with. But that said, so if I'm saying Impact and Danny are locks for what I'm going to build with in the next year, then I'm still talking about jungle, mid, and support. And what are we going to do there? Ignar is when you're going to upgrade if you can. Obviously, there's an import slot for Ignar, so we'd still have one more import slot for jungle or mid. So here's where things get really interesting. Contracts is not the one that I start with. I start with Jojo Pyun, and I say, okay, you've spent, this guy turned 17 this year, so he wasn't, eligible for LCS this year, and also Jizuke was just so much better of a current player than Jojo. But you've had a whole year working with him, you've got Proving Ground still, then you've got a whole offseason. The big question for EG's offseason is, are you confident enough in Jojo Pyun to put him in for the spring split and trust that he'll grow enough over the course of the year that by summer you've got a chance to win LCS with him? Is he good enough for that? And that's what all of it hinges on, right? If yes, you put him in and you've got an import slot for jungle, and that makes the conversation around contracts and what you do in the jungle spot a lot more complicated. If no, and you've got you've got an import slot for mid, and you're like, we think Jojo Pyun needs another year, then maybe you go out big on the import market and try to land a mid laner, right? Now, I don't think that, re-signing Jizuke is an option, but I don't think you re-sign Jizuke and leave Jojo Pyun in Academy. That's not a scenario that I see working together. My personal take, having watched Jojo Pyun from the outside this year, and combined with having seen what worked out with Danny, I think you promote Jojo Pyun. This is what I would do. It's a risk, right? Promoting Danny was also a risk. But here's my take on all of this. I actually tweeted a few weeks ago when there was all the hype about Danny, Rookie of the Year and stuff. Obviously, there has been for a lot of the summer, but a certain conversation about it. And I think it was Azael who tweeted. Like, Danny is the best rookie, that LCS has ever had. And I responded, but I don't even think he's the highest potential player, rookie or prospect in their system, which seemed to shock him a little bit. I think Jojo Pyun has higher potential than Danny. When I was watching them this spring, both of them, I was impressed with Danny. I thought, hey, this guy could be really good. He has some things to work on. I'm excited about him. He comes up into LCS, and I'm like, okay, I think I've seen enough that I can see why they take the risk on this, and he worked out very, very well and still has some things to work on, issues like that. I would have said, throughout the spring split, I would have said the entire split, JoJo is a stronger prospect than Danny. The fact that Danny has worked out so well does not change the level of potential they both have, right? I think JoJo, I just straight up believe that he is the strongest prospect in their system and stronger than Danny. That doesn't mean that he's guaranteed by any means to work out better than Danny in the long run. Okay? It's a risk. There's a huge talent development and prospects and rookies and so on are always a huge risk. There was a really big risk with Danny, and that could have worked out far worse. But you have to take those risks, and I think if you're going to be a team that develops talent internally, that's just something that you accept as part of the process. Okay, apparently the quote from Azale was, one of the most promising young talents in years, excited to see how good he is in a few years, franchise player potential for EG. So, I think that's what I responded to. So there we go. So I think you promote Jojo Pion, which I think means you want to have a relatively strong player in Academy as a bit of a safety valve. What do you do there? Okay, and Papa Smithy is asking, does Jojo Pion fit the main goal? And if the org says something that other than finishing top 3 is a major failure. So yeah, this is part of the risk, right? The risk you would be taking if you promote Jojo Pion is, what if we promote him, it doesn't work out, and we fail to go to Worlds? And that's why they're going to have a lot of sleepless nights, I'm sure, over the next couple months. I think, again, like having seen the confidence boost that I think they would have gotten from how well Danny has worked out will probably boost some of the confidence in Jojo Pion and what they might be able to get out of him. But I don't think that you... So, like, for example, if you're going to keep contracts and your lineup is... Let's say... Here's how I'm going to do this. Let's say your lineup would end up being Impact, Contracts, Jojo Pion, Danny, Ignar, right? If the only thing you do is commit to contracts and promote Jojo Pion, I'm not sure if that's if that's a high enough chance of Worlds. I think it's a chance of Worlds. Kelsey says she's not gonna have sleepless nights because she has a really good 2 hours a night. Yeah, that's healthy. So I think if they do Jojo Pion, I think they have a couple other pieces to do here. One is backup mid laner in case things are really bombing out. And that's a very difficult thing that I'm going to have to explore. Another one is you have an import slot, you upgrade your jungle position. So so in other words, jungle would also be an upgrade if possible kind of a scenario. I'm going to highlight what I'm looking at here. So then the question is, what could you get with an import slot? This is one where not having watched a ton of EU or LCK this year is going to hold me back a little bit on this, but like Jankos is one of the names that's going to get brought up, right? He's not actually a free agent, but I'm sure you could buy him out. G2 is going to I think G2 is going to have at least a few players change. I don't know. I wouldn't be excited about them bringing in Jankos. From what I've seen, and again, I don't have the best knowledge on this. I don't think that's what you want to go for. What else is there? Like, if you're talking buyouts, a lot of things open up. Like, throw a whole bunch of money at Inspired, for example. But I don't think you're going to get him unless it's a huge chunk of money. Here, I did do this. I forgot I did this the other day. Other free agents. Santorin? Whippo, Razorka free agents. Self-made. Canyon. Could you bring in Canyon? What if you could? What if you could sign Canyon? So, like, here's a target list. This is where we put, like, Canyon, Razork. We'll put Yankos on the list because why not? And these are all pending free agents. Self-made. I wonder if Whippo wants to stay as a jungler. I don't even know. What else? Throw some names at me. Other junglers that I don't want to put on the list. We can put in, like, I don't know, buyout target junglers. I mean, I can put Inspired on the list as a buyout target. And I'm going to put in my scenario that it's contracts or an import, and that it's Ignar or an upgrade. Blabber's interesting if C9 actually wants to move on. I mean, if C9 starts shopping Blabber, you talk to them about it, right? The font size is different here. Pandarian thinks there's a 0% chance Canyon would go to NA when he's still the best jungler in the world. Maybe. I think... Yeah, I mean, this is where, again, this is where it gets so difficult. Quailman says, let me point you to a guy named Core JJ. I mean, he's still under contract with TL. He's not a free agent. He's under contract to 2022. Is there a reason to think Core JJ will be available? I don't have any reason to think he'll be available unless he's just like... I mean, here's the thing with TL. Unless maybe there's been a bunch of stuff this year with some of the drama that's happened and like the relationship with the org for some of these players is like, you know what? This is fine for now, but I think I'd like to try something else now because some of the way that played out in the back of my mind thinks, So maybe, and maybe if you put a high enough dollar number on it, Core JJ would become available. I don't know. But I don't know. I don't really have a reason to target Core JJ because I don't think that's a high likelihood. What about other support options? I mean, Aframu, in terms of imports, Hillisang, Kaiser, free agents. Peter Dunn has history with Kaiser. Would Kaiser want to come to NA? Vander, Barrel, Damwon. It'll be really interesting to see what happens to Damwon. I mean, a bunch of good Koreans. Barrel, Lehens, Kellen, Effort. I think I could include all of those reasonably. I'm going to have to fix the formatting here. Kiwi Kid. I mean, Treats, would he want to come back to NA? I don't think he's a stronger option than some of these other ones, but... So, I mean, the takeaway here basically is... You know, how many of these I would say are an upgrade to Ignar is a little tough to say, again, having not watched them super closely this year. But I don't think it's a stretch to say that you could upgrade your support slot, because there are a lot of options out there. The market is a bit of a buyer's market on supports this offseason. That's what I'm seeing, especially in the import market, right? And even domestically, you've got Afram becoming a free agent. You've got Zazel and Smoothie out there who are like, not for a team like EG, I don't think those would match their ambitions, but like they're there. So, I mean, Mickey X might become available for a buyout. Anybody on G2 might become available for a buyout, but I'm not going to list every single possible scenario. I just want to see like what might happen here. So let's say, like, for example, what if you could get here, let's make another version here. What if you could get, what would be like a reasonable option out of these junglers? Let's say you could get Razork. And let's say you could get, I don't know, I feel like getting Kaiser is like Mad Lions have enough money that they And especially if they're going to Worlds and all that kind of stuff, have the history. I think it'd be pretty rough to try to achieve. Let's talk about, I mean, Hillsang's also going to Worlds with Fnatic. Might get re-signed here. I don't know. How about effort? Why not? Like, is that an option? Maybe it's an option. Or what if you did the Damwon combo? This would probably cost too much, and I don't think it's reasonable, but I'm going to put it on there. I can put notes to this because otherwise people are going to get mad when they see it without hearing me talk about it at the same time. Would you do a Canyon Barrel combo along with this? I don't know. So let's say here. Likelihood. This is just a generic one. Like, kind of moderate. This is low. I mean, I could say low and very low if I feel that. What's a more high likelihood option? I mean, I should have some iterations that would involve not JoJo. And I'm definitely focusing mostly on the LCS options here, not so much on what could happen in Academy. But like, because here's what I'm looking at for Academy. You can keep Tony top. I mean, and I think, like, if this is me if I was EG, right? If I was EG, I would be continuing to work with Tony top, probably, depending on... I don't think the top lane... Excuse me. The top lane talent pool in NA I don't think is super deep. So I think when you've got someone like Tony top, you're not going to be like, hey, the grass is greener over there. I'm not like super in love with Tony top, but I think he's pretty good, and he definitely has more potential to keep working with. So like I would be okay with holding on to him. You've got Tony top, you've got Tomio, you've got mid is the big question mark. Team Luke, sure, why not? And then support, I don't know, probably Skytech. So, man, every now and then this music gets so intense, and it's just really fascinating. How like suddenly my whole body's bouncing intense. Skytech. Promoting Aspect. See, I wouldn't promote Aspect if Jojo Piano's my LCS starter. I don't think that's wise organizationally. And if Jojo Piano's not my LCS starter, then Jojo Piano's my Academy mid laner. So that's why I think Aspect is not really... Unless you're going to keep him in EGP, I don't think he's a long-term plan for EG. So like, yeah, mid lane is where a lot of this hinges, I think. So let's look at an iteration where we land Chovy as a free agent. And what would we do with that? Then we'd have Jojo Pion in Academy still, which is totally fine, right? Like, Jojo turned 17 this year. Leaving him Academy another year is by no means something you wouldn't want to do. Man, what would you wrap around with this? I don't think Jizuke will get renewed with EG. I'm not saying like that they couldn't, or that would be a bad, a terrible idea or something, but I think with what you're working towards and like the talent, like, well, here's the thing. You're either promoting Jojo Pion or you're like landing a Chovy level player. Showmaker's also a free agent. Man, what is going on? What is going to go on with Damwon? Ghost is the only, like, other than their kind of second string players, Ghost is the only contract they still have continuing. Wow. Okay, anyways. So yeah, like, if you can swing, if you're going to say Jojo is not what we want to pay, Faker's a free agent. Yeah. I think you are going to have to compete with LPL on Chovy and Showmaker. So good luck with that. But you try it out. Like, I mean, Nemesis, I was on broadcast with him the other day on for the finals of UGP. So cool guy. I don't think he's, I mean, definitely no offense to him to say I don't think he's on the same level as Chovy or Showmaker. Jizuke, maybe. I'm not sure. I haven't seen him play all year, right? So I don't know. And I think to bring Nemesis over to NA at this point would probably, compared to the lifestyle and hopefully income that he's making right now, you'd have to make a really good sales pitch. So yeah, I mean, I'm having a hard time thinking who you'd put behind Jojo Pion for one thing, but let's say Chovy was a thing that could happen. Again, you'd have one import slot left for the other two places, so then you'd hold on, keep contracts, and you do like the swing also big on the barrel effort kind of thing. I think they're going to have money to play with this year. I get that impression. I think a decent number of teams are going to have money to play with this offseason compared to last offseason. But we'll have to see. I'm talking myself in circles a little bit, and I do want to make sure that we have enough time to talk about, one or two other teams. So let's just throw something out. We'll just say an import. Because the thing is, like, when I put actual names in here, that's not as useful as just saying, like, conceptually, what do you go for, and then you go down your priority list, right? And I could spend a lot of time, like, ranking this. Like, oh, here are all the support options that I'm talking about. Or what rank would I... Here's my number 1. If I can't land him, I try to get my number 2. If I can't land him, go for number 3. That's going to take me a lot of time to rank those, and I don't feel like it's the most useful thing. It's more like it could be one of these. And then they've got a whole multi-person staff who's going to be making those ranking lists, who has, been scouting all of these leagues at a level I have obviously not. So, like... So I think what we're going to do is we're going to land on, like, an overarching scenario. So I think what we're going to see is, in Academy, what did I say? You got Tony Top, you've got Tomio, you've got, I'm not sure at mid. So scenario 1, let's say, would be Jojo Pion still staying, because you got another option that buys you a better chance to go to Worlds. You've got Team Luke is a little tough to say, because, like, who are the other options that you would replace Team Luke with? I think Danny you feel comfortable enough with after this split to say we don't need to have a veteran backup as an insurance piece here. So I think it's fine that you can go with still more of a long-term oriented thing here. And I think you go with Skytech. I think Skytech is not like the number 1 support prospect in amateur, but I think he's up there. And it is very difficult sometimes to judge players in a team like EGP individually, given, especially when, like, Tomio and Danny get pulled away over the course of the year. And so I think Skytech shows enough to me that you can move him up. So that's scenario 1, let's say. And then scenario 2 would be something like you'd go with... I mean, I think the scenarios are fairly clear here, and which is not to say that they don't change a lot, but let's say you promote Jojo Pion, so he's not your guy anymore in Academy. Who do you put in as your kind of, like... I mean, some of the options for a veteran insurance piece are what, like Ryoma. Who else am I looking at here? I mean, Demonte, Five Fire is... I mean, Five Fire is also more of a development piece still. Like, he's not really an insurance mid laner. Pobelter. So, I mean, I don't need to lock in on this. Oh, I didn't, actually. Let's say we went with, like, Roma or Pobelter or Demonte. And then let's say Froggen. For bot lane, let's say they wanted to, like, just for another scenario, right? Trying to think of who would be another option out of the bot lane to back up. Arrow? But I don't really know why you'd need to do that. If you've already got a veteran mid to mentor this group, then you don't really... And I mean, Tony Top has been with them all year, so he's at academy level a little bit of that experience. And I also think the coaching staff EG has gives me confidence that you don't need a lot of veterancy in your academy lineup. But it is nice to always have some, at least one piece. But I don't know. Let's just throw it in there for interest's sake and discussion. But I'm fairly confident that Tomio and Skytech stick around. Tony Top, I'm a little less confident in. But I think he can. Arrow is signed with Wildcard this year, but amateur contracts can't carry over into the next year. So Arrow will be allowed to do whatever he wants to do for next year. Which is, I mean, not that he wouldn't anyways, probably, even if it was a multi-year contract, because if the player doesn't want to play for your team, it is in your interest as a GM to not hold them hostage, probably, because that could burn you behind the scenes. So I still want to. I think like the options are wide open and each. You could go so many different directions, but the crucial parts here. Let's see, like, keystone decisions. Let's do that for this. Jojo Pion, promote or no? So you're either going to promote or wait on him. Jungle. So the big keystone decision for Jungle is, do you go for a big import or do you commit to contract? Papa Smithy says, a hot take from my previous stream, CLG's first LCS Shining should be Arrow. I mean, that's actually kind of reasonable. I'm willing to digress into that for a bit. Arrow versus Wild Turtle? I mean, either way, sure. The only thing is, the reason I didn't go down into that much is because I don't think Wild Turtle might want to move on. And if he does, then Arrow is a good option. I don't know if there's a huge difference in their levels and their value as mentors and stuff like that, but sure. I wouldn't have anything against it, that's for sure. And then at support, I think... So I think these are the three big decisions. Do you promote Jojo Pion or wait with him? And I think the deciders on that... Here, I'm going to... There. And the deciders on this are... Is Jojo Pion ready? Which imports are available? Those are the big questions. In here, which imports are available? Arrow is considered a domestic player, yeah, and he has been playing with Wildcard as kind of a player/coach. So, like, when people get excited about Daption in the amateur scene, it's largely because, I mean, at least it looks like it from the outside, he's been playing with Arrow and getting coached by him. Kind of like a Piglet-Vulcan scenario, right? Like, one of the reasons that Vulcan landed so well in the LCS is because he played with Piglet, who I think really nursed him along in a sense, and really taught him a lot. So, and then support, again, like, this comes down to, and if you do end up, you can't really import both mid and jungle and then retain ignore, right? You'd have three. So I think I think EG is in a position where they're going to look for the import market. What's the absolute best we can do? So, like, number one, they decide what are we doing with Jojo Pion, because that decides whether we have 2 import slots left or not. And then you make your decisions on jungle support accordingly, based on what you can land from the market. And I think the market's really good for both jungle and support. So, I mean, to wrap all this up, I think EG is going to have a pretty massive offseason. with how close they are, the talent that they have coming up, the keystone decision of what's going to happen with Jojo Pion, because I think he is the highest potential prospect in Academy. I'm going to do some content later on about kind of my ranking of the top prospects, and having the highest potential doesn't necessarily mean you are the best overall prospect, because I think he's a he's a higher risk prospect than someone else like Kenby, for example. I think Jojo has a higher ceiling than Kenby in my mind, but Kenby has less risk associated with him. So let's talk about, we'll talk about that. And then, depending on what you do with Jojo, you've got Impact as your anchor, you've got Danny as an anchor, and you play it out from there. And at the Academy level, I think you stick with some of the talent you've been working with, and then you either backfill a veteran mid as an insurance policy for Jojo, or not, or you're going to keep Jojo there. I think you promote Skytech, and you go from there. Those are my takes on EG. So I'll move on to another team in a minute here, but if you're watching this as a VOD, that's what I think. Feel free to ask in comments or anything, and we can continue the conversation, or at me on Twitter and complain, or tell me how unrealistic some of this is. But otherwise, thanks for watching.